Good morning, church family. Hope you are having a great morning now. I was nervous during my first lesson the last time, and it got moved a few times because of the weather. And now this time, the weather will allow me to speak without it getting involved. This is a hard topic for me to talk about. You might see me crying up here, and if that happens, it's okay. The topic is about death. Some of you will be mentioned in my sermon. I may have a few pictures of you or none to show. Now, I just want to say, after all the sermons I heard on death, I have actually experienced death myself. And the one sermon I thought was great on death was Doug Hurst, that he taught back around the last time we were without a pastor. His lesson taught me something about death. You don't know how hard it is until you experience death yourself. I have experienced death of loved ones like my Uncle Scott. The heart, the soul of the family, the rock, the stone, the man who kept the family going. I have quite a few memories with him. One of the memories I have with him is him teaching me on how to work on vehicles in the shop. Now I know a little bit what's wrong with a vehicle when it needs to be diagnosed. Another memory I have with him is us staying up late at night talking about our day and how work was. I remember how my uncle took me in when I was young in a bad place to be living. He was one of my guardians, along with his wife, Wanda. He helped raise me into the young man I am today. I couldn't do it without his knowledge. I remember he would also tell me, let's go for a ride around town and have a soda. We would get something to drink from Mr. Burger or Sonic, and we would go right around Liberal or Tyrone or even around Hooker. And we would talk for an hour or just a few, just driving around. I remember when he first met my wife, Shalisa. He told me she was already part of the family, even though we wasn't even married yet. And he said I should make that official and marry her. She is better than your ex. She is also way prettier. We all love her. His death was one of the hardest that hit me out of all the deaths I have experienced. He was basically a parent to me, more than an uncle. I thought of him like a dad, a role model, someone who I could look up to. Well, the day he died, I was supposed to be in the car with him on February 14th of 2023. I was supposed to go with him to Guyman that day, but I woke up late, and I wish I didn't. I was supposed to be with him that day. Why did I wake up late? Only God will know. I think it should have been me that day that died, not him. Maybe it was a sign from God. Now, I still wish it was me and not him. Most of you may have known him as a mechanic or just my Uncle Scott, or you may have known him as much more. A few more deaths I've experienced was my grandmother Brenda, my Uncle Noah. I remember the day that my Uncle Noah passed away. I got a call from the hospital saying he's in the hospital and that I was the only number they had to get a hold of. He has fallen and broken his hip at the nursing home, and he will have to be transferred to a hospital that will be able to handle his needs with his dialysis. and we'll give you a call when we transfer him. So they called me when I just got off work and told me he died from a seizure on his way to the helicopter. I got all the news after working all night, and I asked if they had called his two daughters to tell them, and they said, "No, why should we?" I said, "Because I'm not the one that's power of attorney or anything over him." And they're like, "You're the only number we have." So I had to tell his two daughters, and then I had to tell my mother that her brother was gone. Another death that was hard for me was Anita Trimpe. One memory that I have with Anita was around Christmas of 2021, when I dressed up as Santa Claus and went to her house and gave her a few gifts. Her eyes lit up like a Christmas tree on Christmas Day. She asked Santa if she could take a photo with Santa. She told us it's not Mommy kissing Santa, it's Granny kissing Santa. Another memory is every time me and Riley would go over to her house and watch Jeopardy with her, she would tell me, "Why you got a belly on you? Is it 'cause you're eating all that Mr. Burger food?" At the time I was working down there. Another death that is hard for me was Ruby Trimpe. She was like a mother to me and many of Riley's friends. She treated us as one of her own. She would get on to us for doing stupid stuff. I remember one time, it was Ruby, Riley, and I were in Guyman on Pioneer Day eating at the restaurant Banditos. Riley and I were messing around with a knife that came with our silverware, and we both got cut by the knife. She yelled at us for acting stupid with knives. So whenever she was with us when we went out to eat and there were knives around, she made sure to take them from us. She told us knives were not play toys. Till this day, me and Riley will never play with knives again. Another memory I have with Ruby is Pioneer Day Parade. We were all throwing candy, me, Riley, and Ruby, and she ended up hitting somebody in the head with a piece of candy. She made sure to blame me and Riley for it. I used to be able to talk with her about anything I was having trouble with. When I got the phone call from Riley at 1 o'clock in the morning, the day she passed away, I didn't process that she was gone at first. Then, when I fully woke up, I was a wreck. It finally hit me that she was gone. These deaths were hard for me and my loved ones. I had a few people who had been there for me in a hard time. I want to say thank you to my wife, Shalisa. And I want to say thank you to Riley. And then I also want to say thank you to Marcus. And then I want to say thank you to Tanner. And then I want to say thank you to Ricky Trimpe. They've been there for me when I didn't know who else to turn to besides our Lord and Savior. My friends and my wife have helped me a lot. I remember Ricky telling me a few stories of my Uncle Scott that I didn't even know about him. I also remember Riley telling me I didn't have to go through the pain all alone. And I remember Tanner telling me I'm holding it together better than most. Now, the one who actually let me cry in front of them when I broke down was my wife. I remember telling her, "I didn't want you to see me like this, but thank you for letting me show how I really felt." I know many of you have experienced the death of a loved one, like Janelle Eggleston, Jeannie Hershey, Erlene Witt, Fran Roberts, Kyle Roberts, Sue Cogburn, and Dan and Marva Harold, and Doug and Julie Hurst, and James and Janie, and there's many more of you. You may not show that you are grieving or you are sad. You go out and about with a smile on your face, but you try to be tough with losing a loved one. I want to say thank you for being strong and tough. Now, even if you thought you were strong and tough when a death of a loved one happens, it will be hard and tough not to cry for them. It's a rough thing. Grieving will happen any time of the day or night. You could be with friends, talking with family, or at work, or at church, or you could be just laying in bed at night. We will have tears run down our face. A song on the radio when driving down the road can bring back so many memories of a loved one. And that is just part of grieving. It can last a year or 5 or many more than that. We really never get over grieving the loss of a loved one. If you lost a loved one, a wife, mom, dad, grandmother, child, a close friend, aunt, uncle, or a person who you are really close to with at church or at work, it's okay to grieve for them. One night I was on my way home from work, and a few songs came on that reminded me of my loved ones. One song was about a mechanic, which reminded me of my Uncle Scott. The song after that was "You Are My Sunshine." That reminded me of my grandmother Brenda, how she sang that song to me when I was younger. And the other song after those two was "If Heaven Had Visiting Hours," which reminded me of my other mother, Ruby. Spend as much time with your loved ones while you can, because we don't know when we will be called home. It could be after church or now or tomorrow or 50 plus years from now. Who knows? Who knows when we will be called home? So be with your loved ones as much as possible, because some of us can't be with ours. And now to my lesson. We will all have to face death of a loved one sooner or later. We as Christians meet this reality more than most people because we belong to a bigger family, and that family is called the church. In the body of the Christ, God blesses us with many brothers, sisters, fathers, and mothers, all dear loved ones whose spiritual bond with us will never be severed. We must all conclude with death. Someday, we will all confront our own death. But along the way, we will witness death of beloved friends, family, that's passed from this life into the next. Death is a real enemy, a frightening enemy. The last enemy that is to be destroyed is death. I have watched people die in front of me. I have lost friends, family to death. Death is ugly. Death brings sorrow. And there is nothing wrong with grieving in the face of death. Jesus himself wept over the death of his friend Lazarus. God has so designed us that death is not unusual to us. We were meant to live. But when we lose a loved one who is a believer of Christ, we need to remember a truth that will help us deal with the loss. Grief will strike us, but by the grace of God, sorrow will not overcome us. We read words that close and prayerful reflection should be very near to our heart when a loved one passes away. Carefully consider the language. Father, I desire that they also whom you have given me may be with me where I am, to see my glory that you have given me, because you loved me before the foundation of the world. As a man, Jesus has certain desires. He had desires on earth, and he still has desires in heaven. Here, Jesus has a desire that he makes known to the Father. He speaks as he often has before that, of those whom the Father has given him. Those whom the Father has given to Christ are the very sheep for whom the Good Shepherd laid down his life. Jesus prays to the Father for his beloved sheep in the high priestly prayer of John chapter 17. And he continues to indicate for them to this very day. And what does Jesus desire? He desires that his people be with him. Jesus is completely happy and satisfied as he reigns from heaven. But according to his prayer in John chapter 17, he still has a certain unfulfilled desire that his people join him in the home he has already prepared for them. We may lose, but Jesus gains an angel. When a brother or sister in the Lord dies, we should remember, first and foremost, that the Father has answered Jesus' prayer. God is sovereign over our loved ones' death, and he has purpose we may never understand. But we can cling to the Father and to the truth that Jesus has prayed for his Father to bring the people home. When a Christian dies, the Father is saying to his Son a request that he first prayed for nearly 2,000 years ago on the night before he gave up his life for the people. We can at least say this much: when a loved one passes, Jesus gains a lot more than just someone we have lost. Yes, we have lost. We will never again share sweet fellowship with that brother or sister in this life. The magnitude of the loss often eludes our words, but the loss is never beyond Jesus' words. Father, I desire that they also whom you have given me may be with me where I am, to see my glory, eternal joy beyond the grave. Jesus knows he has a glory that is far beyond a true sight of him. and is worth more than millions of words. He knows that the sight of his glory will leave no one unsatisfied. Jesus is eager for his precious saints to enter true eternal happiness with him. We certainly taste many joys in this life, but nothing can compare to the pure delight of unhindered fellowship with Jesus. We are designated for unspeakable joy in his presence. Now, if we can be assistance to you, please come forward as we stand and sing.